Well, I guess Pete Mundo has it all figured out from Heartland College Sports. Pete Mundo, a deal isn't going to be done. And OU and Texas have been very petty since last week. They're the only two teams in the Big 12 that didn't have a big rollout of their 2023 football schedule. No graphics or videos on IG or Twitter. No, nothing. Texas and OU have done nothing. Except for maybe this.
Because if you're a fan of one of those other teams and y'all are mad at us for not wanting to pay every single time y'all step into y'all's new weight room or new locker room, y'all just need to go ahead and do a handwritten letter to the University of Texas and the University of Oklahoma because we're the only reasons y'all could afford it. You're welcome. Your new basketball, you're welcome. You get new turf next year, you're welcome. Those jerseys look good, and you're welcome for them.
Hey, there's that. Let's go! Welcome back to the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Watkins, and if you love college football, you're definitely in the right place. So before you forget, smash that red subscriber button, like our videos, and don't forget to ring the bell so you don't miss one moment of the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. Folks, we are still at an impasse, but it might not be completely over. When it comes to this negotiation on whether or not Texas and Oklahoma are going to be allowed to leave the Big 12 a year early, or whether they're going to leave a year early, having come up with the right deal to make everybody happy, we're getting a lot of mixed messages. On Friday, there was a report that there was a deal that was okayed by 4 of the 5 parties involved in this, which that's the one thing about this whole deal is that this is not a 1-to-1. The Texas has to get along. Texas and OU have to somehow make the Legacy 8 of the Big 12 happy. There's other parties involved in this. The SEC's involved in it. You obviously have ESPN and Fox, good versus evil, as we're seeing behind me on the screen there. Kind of joking around in that intro there, because that was actually from the Lone Star CFB pod on Friday night. I joined Christian and Logan to talk about it, and it just seemed like at that point you were getting a lot of the message. I mean, right before we went on the air, you started hearing from a couple of different outlets that there was, and one of them including Sports Illustrated, that was saying that there was a possibility that the deal wasn't over. But earlier in the day, it was basically being said that Oklahoma and Texas would be staying in the conference until 2025 as originally planned. And this is not just me coming in as an Oklahoma fan. All of the talk that has come out of Oklahoma and Texas so far, and I realize that they're not going to come out and say anything publicly and mess with any kind of negotiation leverage they may have. But everything that's been said from day one, from the day in July of 2021 that they decided to move on to the SEC was that they planned to stay through the end of the grant of rights deal with ESPN and Fox, which is through 2025. Now, I don't think that anybody expected that. That's 4 years whenever it all said and done. I think everybody expected that even possibly last season may have been the last. And it certainly by the end of the season, it was, there was a lot of bad blood, particularly when you consider that the officiating was so bad in games that involved Oklahoma and Texas. You can look at the paperwork. If you don't believe it, these guys, Oklahoma had one holding call called against an opponent the entire season. Texas, 3. A total of 4 holding calls called against Oklahoma and Texas opponents. There's some other calls that we could point at, but I'm not going to get into it. The point of the matter being is that it was toxic by the time it was all said and done this season. Everybody had the hopes that maybe 2023 would be the final season. You're headed into the SEC. The Legacy 8 plus the new 4, which basically equates to a Group of 5 conference now, masquerading as a Power 5, is going to be happier. Texas and Oklahoma are surely going to be happier. But the hang-up has always been on the money, okay? Now, on Friday, Oklahoma and Texas were happy with the deal. The Big 12 was happy with the deal. The SEC was happy with the deal. And even, apparently, so was ESPN. Well, lo and behold, Fox isn't. And essentially what it amounts to is that they are Fox Network, 2024 would be their year, televise the Red River Shootout between Oklahoma and Texas. That is, as we've talked about plenty of times, the money game of the year in the Big 12. It will be one of the money games of the year in the SEC when it goes to. So they weren't happy. Apparently there's some options of trades and stuff like this with different inventory games that they might be able to do in the future. I've heard talk of Texas is going to be playing Michigan and Ohio State in home and homes coming up, over the next few years. But they offered up a trade of one of them, or maybe, I don't know exactly the details of it because it's just kind of sketchy what's coming out. It wasn't good enough for one of them. The deal wasn't done. And the other thing you have to remember is that the SEC doesn't just want to give up its marquee games either, right? So what I'll tell you is that the entire time Texas and Oklahoma have agreed to stay, and have always said that they'll stay. Even early in the season when they finally got around to talking to Brent Yormark, he really didn't talk to him during Big 12 media days. He then went around on a tour of all of the universities in the Big 12 to talk to them about everything. I think it was pretty much by the time he got around to Oklahoma and Texas, they did discuss what they wanted to do. And I think that there's plenty of room pointing to OU and Texas saying, hey, yeah, we don't really want to do this because of the fact that they were taken out of the voting on allowing these new 4 schools, UCF, Cincinnati, BYU, and Houston, into the conference a year earlier than they had expected. They didn't want to play them because they didn't want to share money. And, when the schedule got released last week, lo and behold, Oklahoma's playing 3 of those 4, 2 of them on the road. Cincinnati on the road in the opener for the Big 12. And then the second to last week of the conference season, they get to go out to Provo. Texas gets to go to Houston, which they did not want to go and do that. They hate each other for I guess there's a laundry list of reasons why Houston and Texas cannot stand each other. They certainly did not want to go into Houston to play that game. Now, they agreed to it. And if you look at the schedules, I mean, if you're Oklahoma and Texas, you can't complain too much. Those, aside from those, Texas leaves the state of Texas twice over the season. Oklahoma only leaves Oklahoma 3 times. So, you can't exactly complain too much about that. Obviously, the Provo game, that's a tough place to play. Probably not a place that you would have preferred to go to if you're Oklahoma. But then again, probably the toughest game of the season. And you get UCF at home, which is the other better team. If you're going to have to play them, you'd rather play them at home. Now, in the end, I think everybody was they also expected that deal would get done later in the week. That was being rumored as going to be happening. So everybody was happy. Now, once it came apart on Friday, again, you get a lot of these conflicting reports. You got half the media, saying one thing and half the media saying something else. But essentially, it was the Fox contingent that wasn't happy. Again, part of it having to do with the Red River game. They get 36% of the inventory per season, which, it was going to throw it off. The other part of it would have been the money. So they're wanting to see Oklahoma and Texas pay a larger amount of the 2 different fees that they're supposed to pay to get out if you're going to get out early. One of them is there's 2 different fees, and this is all coming from that Sports Illustrated article. He said it was a fluid nature that, the negotiations were of a fluid nature. There remained a possibility, and there's really not a deadline on these negotiations. This was backed up on Monday by Brent Yormark, who, as of Friday, was leaking out to Pete Thamel that it was over. He didn't think that it was going to happen. I don't know that Texas, Oklahoma, and the rest of the Legacy 8s are taking no for an answer on that. They want to figure this out. Now, the only thing is that nobody seems to want to give anything. And here's the issues that are really, this is all a money thing, because aside from the fact that Fox has to be made whole as well, they want their money. And there's a lot of, because of these 2 landmark deals that the SEC and Big Ten have come up with, there's obviously a lot of rivalry between the 2 networks, Fox and ESPN. ESPN, and obviously they have a exclusive deal with SEC, and Fox wanted the same with the Big Ten and actually worked behind the scenes to make sure that happened, that they were able to cut them out of the deal. So therefore, nobody is really wanting to give much, according to what Dellinger said in his SI report. But he did concede that and that's why he said these negotiations are a complicated mess. You've got 2 testy blue bloods, 8 frustrated legacy members of the Big 12, 2 neighboring FBS conferences, and most notably, the rival networks. So these are a lot of people that have to be made happy before this can happen. It's not just about it's not just about Oklahoma, Texas, and the Big 12 that have to, figure it out. Now, what I would tell you is that Pete Thamel's always, lately he has been the guy breaking all the news that has anything to do with Big 12 realignment, expansion. There's been a lot of speculation that the Big 12 was going to make a move to grab those closest schools to the conference, which would be the Arizona schools, possibly Colorado and Utah. Now, he also was the one that broke the news about Gonzaga being a possibility to come into the league as a basketball school only. That kind of tells you that he's got a source at the Big 12. most likely Yormark, because he's getting all this news. Well, and why wouldn't Yormark want anybody to think that it was over? And what he was reporting on Friday was that they were staying till 2025. Most likely there was, they stay. And that's why he's putting it out there. Why? Well, as of Friday, I felt like it was something that Yormark felt like if Oklahoma and Texas believe that the only way that they can get out after 2023 is to go higher to raise their end of it up and not, demand concessions from the other side, whatever. They're more likely to meet those demands. They can't afford it if anybody can, particularly Texas. That would make his legacy members happy if they paid more, because they've got that $16 million each that they're paying to allow these guys to come in, these new teams to come in a year early. Again, I've said this before. I feel like that's an investment made by the legacy schools. I don't blame them for doing it, but I don't feel like Oklahoma and Texas should have to pay that. In any event, what you do have, which is another one of these things that makes it very complicated, is two different things. First and foremost, you have, as we talked about, the grant of rights deal with the television networks, which if you break it essentially, for if you go out a year early, you have to pay for 2 years worth of revenue. Your cut is right around $40 million each. You're looking at about $80 million there. Okay. Now, would they pay that entire amount? Probably not. But it's going to be anywhere between, like, say, 60 and like 30 and $60 million, something like that. You also have the deal that was signed in 2012, the 99-year deal is what they called that, that anybody who leaves the conference prior to 99 years has to pay the sum of $80 million, which is essentially the same. It's 2 years worth of revenue. Now, that one's going to turn into probably a lawsuit. But essentially, if you start looking at, they're going to negotiate this down and that down and whatever. And, they may have certain amounts of games that they can make up. Maybe they've talked about having some of the SEC schools playing home games at Big 12 stadiums that would, theoretically pay the Fox part of it off. Or maybe make the Big 12 itself a little more profit on that, so that because they get to host. Now, in any event, you're looking at anywhere between $60 million in total. Because both of these payments, the 99-year deal and the grant of rights, there is going to be something come out of that. So Oklahoma and Texas, it's not just $84 million like we thought. It's anywhere between $60 million and all the way up to $130 million. Now, Oklahoma and Texas aren't going to do that. And this is why they've said that from the start, that they would stay until 2025, make their $40 million every year, and not have to pay that. They're still going to have to pay somewhere on that 99-year deal either way. But it would be a lot less to lose. Now, I mean, they're going to go and make a lot more money in the SEC. And I would think that Texas can certainly afford it a little better than Oklahoma can with its Longhorn network and all the money that they've made over the last 15 years or whatever. That being said, this is just one of those things that it's so fluid. Now on Monday, even as Yormark had said over the weekend that it didn't look like, or on Friday, he had acted like, obviously passing that on to Thamel, that it was over with, and he thinks it's over with, I don't think that it is. Here's the thing, and this is something that Brett McMurphy had brought up on Friday, was the fact that when Missouri left the Big 12, they didn't make their decision to do so until November, and they were gone the next September. They were in the new conference. There is no hard and fast deadline at this point that says that they have to have it. I don't know that November is really going to do it, because I know that's when the SEC is trying to get their schedule done earlier. I don't know that November is probably going to happen, but it could, it could. So I don't think that this is anything that's gonna go away anytime soon, unless somebody comes up with the right thing to make Fox happy, and it keeps everybody else happy. Because if you've got to take away one thing to give to another, and so unless Oklahoma and Texas are willing to just cough up extra cash to make them happy, and it doesn't change anybody else's deal that was already happy as of Friday, I don't know. It doesn't seem like that it's that close to being done. But something tells me the further that this thing goes on, and particularly I'm going to say this. You've got Oklahoma and Texas in this recruiting period in the 2022 or at the end of the 23 cycle. By the time it was all over with, they had recruited a total of, between them, 34 blue chip recruits. They had signed them. The rest of the 12 members of the Big 12 had recruited 30. 34 for Texas and Oklahoma, 30 for the Legacy 8 and the new 4. Okay? So, and here's the thing when you look at the schedule, both of these teams should be really good. I think that Oklahoma's still a little young, and my expectation is really more around that 8-9 win thing. I feel like Texas ought to be winning 10 or at least 10, but you never know. What I do know is that TCU is not going to be near the same as what they were a year ago. BYU was off and on last season. They could definitely be one of those teams that comes in and does well, but I don't know that if you come into the first year in this conference trying to get your feet wet, that you're just going to come in and win the thing. I just tend to doubt that. Now, that being said, they possibly could, and UCF would be the other threat, I feel like. With Luke Fickell having left to Wisconsin, Cincinnati looks like they're going to be kind of shaky, and Houston looks bad. I think that Oklahoma State is the worst team in the conference right now, that even worse than Kansas, and I think that Houston's probably going to be right behind them. I don't think that either one of their coaches are getting anything done, and that's the other reason I feel like they're going to want these guys out, is because Okie Light doesn't want to play Oklahoma again. They don't. They certainly don't want to go back to Norman and finish off, this Bedlam series that's going away on the road, getting smashed 2 times in a row, because I would feel like that's what's going to happen. Now, that's what I was getting at, is that I feel like if Oklahoma or Texas or both of them are in the running and in the conference championship game, or one of them's in the conference championship game, and God forbid one of them wins the conference championship game, I think that as you get down towards the end of the season and that writing is on the wall that one of them's probably going to win it, or both of them could be in it, that's going to be the end. That they will come back to the table and try to get them out of there, because if they win it in 23 and then they still got 24 coming back, again, 34 blue chip prospects to 30 for the rest of the 12. It's just, if you look at it, some of these guys are not going to, and Oklahoma did really well in the transfer portal as well. So I just got to tell you, I feel like these two teams, one of these teams is probably going to win the thing. And that would bring these guys back to the table immediately. I don't know. Folks, let me know what you think on some of this. And the thing is there's really no guarantees on any of it. you do have, Ross Dellinger of Sports Illustrated, sharp guy. I'm a fan of Brett McMurphy as well. Pete Thamel, I feel like I think he does a great job, but I also think that there's something there that he may be kind of working as the mouthpiece of Brett Yormark that's kind of helping his negotiation. He's reporting, he's tight enough with him that what he's getting, so he's going to report it this way, and it kind of leans in favor of Yormark. But I don't know. It's we're going to have to wait and see kind of how this goes. The one thing is that you just got to remember that this isn't a two-party deal that is can be easily worked out. What we do know is all sides, aside from maybe the networks, want this over with. When it comes to Texas and Oklahoma and the rest of these members of the Big 12, they both want the same thing, to split. So to me, that says that I'm going to hold out hope until the end that that's what's going to happen. Do I care if they stay an extra year? There's a side of me that says yeah, because and a lot of it will depend on what we see from the officiating this year and what happens, because that's definitely another possibility that the officiating could be as bad as it was. You could see them lose some games that might help them win the conference. I just don't know that the Big 12 is going to allow it. I know that they don't want to hear that. I know that nobody wants to hear that. But it's not a conspiracy theory. It's the truth. 4 holding calls all season. There's a lot of people in Lubbock that thought that kick that they made went through, not, missed. So I don't know. We're going to find out what kind of happens. But let me know what you think in there. Folks, please make sure if we've actually added 100 new subscribers in the last couple of days. I really appreciate that. If you're new to the channel, welcome aboard. I'm glad to see you all here. We're going to be doing a lot more. We're doing some new stuff on covering Colorado, Coach Prime. We're actually going to be bringing you some content from Notre Dame as well for the coach. He's a big Notre Dame fan. And this was never intended to be just an Oklahoma podcast. I will always continue to bring you Oklahoma, Texas, Big 12, SEC. That is definitely the priority for me. But I tell you, it's a lot of interesting information coming out of that Colorado program and Coach Prime. And I think that Notre Dame, it continues to be an interesting program. That a lot of things have happened over the last week. Join us tonight for our live stream. It's going to be at 7:30 Central Time, 8:30 Eastern, obviously. So join us tonight. Me and the coach will be on. We may have a guest or two as well, but you'll know more about that probably as you see this. I'll let you know. But thanks a lot for stopping by. Let me know what you think on this. Is there a chance that you feel like they're going? Do you think they should stay another year? I've heard a lot of people say that another year doesn't bother anybody because you get another year of recruiting and not having to go up against that, juggernaut of a SEC slate without having a couple of good years of recruiting under your belt if you're Brent Venables. So let me know what you think in the comments. Hey, you can always help us out by donating. Hit the little heart button there. Give us a little, give us tips. You can actually just go in and do it on Cash App or Venmo if you prefer. And actually, I do kind of prefer that myself. But and then you can always buy pod merchandise. Our Fanatic store. I've got some new deals that we're working out with a couple of companies to, listen, if you're doing anything with online working, and a lot of people are working from home these days, if you would like some ways to make some extra money yourself, we've got some amazing software and great deals on being able to do so. We'll be talking about that more as we go along. But help us out, help this channel grow. Thank you so much for the folks that have subscribed over the last few days. We hope that you enjoy every minute of it. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to hear about, and we'll see you on the next one.